Even while we sleep, we will find you acting on your best behavior. Turn your back on Mother Nature. Everybody wants to rule the world. It's my own design. It's my own remorse. Help me to decide. Help me make the most of freedom and of pleasure. Nothing ever lasts forever. Everybody wants to rule the. There's a room where the light won't find you. Holding hands while the walls come tumbling down. When they do, I'll be right behind you. So glad we've almost made it. So sad they had to fade it. Everybody wants to rule the world. I can't stand this indecision, married with a lack of vision. Everybody wants to rule the. Say that you'll never need it. One headline, why believe it? Everybody wants to rule the world. All for freedom and for pleasure. Nothing ever lasts forever. Everybody wants to rule the world.
Hello. Welcome yet again to another pre-recorded live show of Kindred UMC. My name's Chris Haden. I'm the pastor of Kindred UMC.
Hey, I'm Courtney. I'm the director of community engagement at Kindred UMC.
And I'm Preston, and I don't need glasses.
But you wear glasses sometimes.
Is it cosmetic?
Huh?
Is it cosmetic
Very
like Courtney's?
Yep.
Mine are very real.
No, they're not. We've already been over this.
I could afford through one of them.
The rose gold circle ones.
Yeah, the $6 ones from Forever 21.
Yeah.
Great.
When I was in high school and college and I was playing in bands, I found the greatest pleather, fake leather, Neo style trench coat at Forever 21 for $12.
It's Forever 21.
And I don't know, somewhere in the moves, I think a girlfriend threw it away without me knowing.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how dare you?
Jonas Lake has a little hat on my foot and it's very cute.
I know he's had a rough couple of days.
My little buddy.
I think he's on his way out. I think he's on his way out. He can't even get excited about barking. And when he used to go out and bark at squirrels a lot. And now he kind of goes out there and he's like, rah! What?
Poor buddy.
It's a good wharf.
Yeah. So anyway, so we are continuing our journey through the book of Genesis with first families. And we talked about Noah and the flood. So before we talk about the Tower of Babel, as always, I want to check in. Any questions about, any comments, anything that's come up in the following weeks that you want to address about Noah?
Nah, fam, I'm good.
Really?
Really?
Do you remember what the firmament is?
What the what?
The firmament. You don't pay attention to anything.
Depends on the day.
The firmament. It's the thing that people believed kept the ocean above us
That's right.
and crashing down on us.
It could be why we have an atmosphere different than other planets, or like we have more water there. Which
You guys
probably
get into
not
the sciencey history, and this is
You know, like you are
Whatever.
science. Like you are things that you study.
Yeah, science and theology are like two, I don't know, prongs on the same fork. Of like they're just trying to describe reality.
But
Sure.
You're eating cereal over here.
and I will let the experts
You're the
handle that
spokes.
discussion. And I will talk about literature, story structure,
Will you?
metaphor.
You roll your eyes every time I bring up story structure
Only
too.
if you say Joseph Campbell every 5 seconds.
You said it first this time.
Yeah,
I know.
you drink. Everybody drink. Everybody has to do the whole drink because Courtney brought it up before me. All right. Well, we're going to talk about the Tower of Babel, which is Genesis chapter 11, verses 1 through 9. And it's like a weird story, but hopefully we can unweird it through the use of history and science.
Great. So excited about that.
Okay, so let's start with the text. That seems like a good place to start. So this is after the flood, and again, the text. It's important here. I'm going to do this because this is like a visual cue for me when I'm editing, because I have to know when to put the actual screens up. So I'm sitting. I do a lot of describing like this with the book open, and editing. I'm like, "What are you doing? Close the book." So all right. So the flood has happened. It's important to not take it too literally, because then you'll be in situations where, like, how can three people and their how can three men and their wives completely fill the earth? Like, doesn't make any sense. It's a lot of doing it. A lot of
It's
doing
not that big.
it. Yeah, and a lot of cousin loving too.
That,
Yeah.
that took a
It
turn.
has to happen.
So, I
Real
mean,
quick.
if you're a literalist, you gotta get on board with cousin loving, which I think is pretty well correlated. People who are biblical literalists tend to be cousin lovers. I said it.
Courtney.
You know how literal you are, Courtney.
Yeah. You know me.
I don't like science.
Yeah, no. So
I like science. I don't care to talk about it.
what if
I don't like The Bachelor, and I don't want to talk about it at all.
imagine saying that about a person you love?
Yeah.
I like my nephew just fine. I just don't want to talk about him.
Sure. Not the same thing though.
I would go like, I don't think you like him.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. It bores me to talk about it.
Yeah, I don't think you like
talking
it.
about it.
I think you don't like it.
Yeah, I don't.
That's fine. You can like what you like. That's another big. It's never made its way officially into our axioms, but that is an axiom that I live by. Like what you like. Like, and that was also my strongest argument when I was in seminary, and I went to a conservative seminary where like everybody was against gay marriage. Everybody was like, the Bible says. And my whole big argument again. Now I have much more well thought, but my main basic argument is like what you like. Like what you like. I mean, unless it's like harmful, like nobody's hurting anybody. Like what you like. Like, hey man, if you're into K-pop, be a 40-year-old man who's into K-pop. Like,
If you're
do
into
it.
The Bachelor, like The Bachelor.
Oh, no,
what you
do
like.
K-pop. Let's do K-pop.
Like what you
Let's
like.
go back to K-pop.
I nominated you for next season.
Like, I hate The Bachelor. I literally can't stand The Bachelor.
Special.
I can't when it's on TV.
Trash TV.
I
Quality.
can't tolerate. Like, I have to leave the room at some point because otherwise I'm going to ruin it for everybody who likes it. I'm
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, and this one's on the couch. I'm listening.
Yeah,
Like it's
right.
riveting television.
It is
You
riveting.
have to hear everything he says.
There's so much drama.
They're in the Philippines again.
Yeah.
3 weeks.
Look at you paying attention.
Are they really?
No,
Okay.
not this season, but they were on
You
season
could have kept
2.
going with
But
that.
they were in
You got
one.
me.
They were in a
Yeah.
Bahama one time.
One of them.
Last season they were in Thailand.
Huh?
Last season they were in Thailand.
Okay.
So when you like things, it's weird to talk about liking
Like what you
things
like.
too. Well, like what you like, and so this whole weird debacle Twitter thing we're in now is if you don't like what I like, we
Ooh.
can't get along because
Well-
I don't like that you like that I like, you don't like I like what I like.
I
There's so many.
I would say that most of that is driven by like there's a political thing going. We're also being manipulated.
I
by
also
that.
say loneliness.
There's like
A lot of loneliness.
so there's like algorithmic reasons for that, and then there's also like political
I'm waiting for the 2 words to come out so I can say take a drink.
identity politics. Is that the one?
No, I was going to say cancel culture.
Oh, cancel culture. That's another one. Yeah,
That's
cancel
what
culture
leads
can,
to cancel culture.
cancel culture can fuck right off. Like, it's so stupid.
Courtney started. So.
And it's rooted in identity politics. You know, and I'm not talking about like Bill Cosby, like who actually literally
Needs
raped
to
several,
be
like,
canceled.
yeah,
Put
cancel that
himself.
asshole. That's an evil motherfucker. You know, and like,
But it's not trickled down.
but
You
yeah,
have
but
to
there's
case the case, please.
We need to make a list of like phrases and words that Chris says so that we can have an ongoing
all right.
drinking.
Let's get into the
Party.
text, which is where this whole thing started and got derailed.
Did not
Nine
end up-
verses.
See, this is the kind of straight talk you don't get from Sunday morning sermons.
That's right.
The real shit that we at Kindred UMC are here to address.
It always makes me giggle. It was if a preacher would get into a sermon, and then someone spoke up in the crowd, and they go, hang on. Yeah, what about?
I love that.
And then just like stepped off and started going.
I love
into it.
that. I could never, because when I was at Eustis, which is like a typical kind of Sunday morning traditional church, I mean, it was Methodist, so it was fairly progressive compared to most churches, but still fairly conservative because it was in like a red county of like Eustis is a pretty red city.
We're traditionalist and structured.
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
most part.
And like, you know, although I'm discovering I'm way less progressive than I thought I was, because apparently I'm not fucking progressive enough for progressive. But whatever. But I am like a classic liberal. Like I'm just classic liberal. And so like occasionally I'd get somebody in the crowd who would be willing to like raise their hand and ask, and I'd be like, "You, sir." Yes, madam. What do you have?
Yeah.
Because I love that. I love actually talking about it. And there were a few people who like took the bait and got into it. You know.
This is more of a
But
personal.
it's there's also like a stand-up element too, where you have to manage it, because some people will just
Talk.
they'll derail you intentionally because and then it's not malicious, but they just have this thing inside of them that doesn't sense the room, you know. Like, and so there's a little bit of a stand-up element of like trying to handle the hecklers too.
Well, not sensing the room is either nervousness, anxiety, or just pure narcissism.
Well, like desire for
Everyone loves
attention.
me.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Um,
I'm helping.
This personal
Eh.
question. So preaching, was there ever someone like not front row, so stupid sounding, but in the front or something, and see the face kind of like, and they go dead? Does it ever? I need to talk to them later, or I should stop and like rewind, or are you just
Not for me. I'm more in the flow. I have like there's a few faces that stand out to me, and I don't pick them. There's a few faces that stand out to me in the crowd. And then there's like the crowd as an entity, you know. But I've noticed when it's almost like there's a certain like buildup that happens, and then a threshold gets crossed where and you're like, oh, there's like 4 people who are just zoned out right now. Like, and there's
But
one
you can
guy.
Tell? You can tell. That's
Oh yeah.
what's funny to me.
Well, in a church, because
Yeah.
like if you're on stage, because I've been on plenty of stages too as a musician and a theater guy. Like when you're on stage, the lights you can't
They're so
see
bright.
anything.
Yeah.
But in a church on a Sunday morning, most sanctuaries are well lit enough that you can literally look people in the face.
Right.
And so like there was a guy at Eustis who would literally fall asleep. He did not care for me. And he would like blatantly like fall asleep.
Ew, why?
And then there was also another person who actually she like very vehemently loved me and gave me strong feedback and really was loyal and faithful. And she would just it's like, all right, well, that helped. If anybody's out there taking stuff personally, not everything's about you. Sometimes it's just about growing old, Jonah. Growing old and getting tired. Yeah, that's the way it goes, bro. All right, we've dicked around too much. Let's go. We're going to talk about the Bible now.
Yes.
Genesis, chapter 11, the Tower of Babel. Post-flood, the world has been populated. The like job that God gives to Noah's family is to multiply and fill the earth. That's an important part. So here we go. Chapter 11, verses 1 through 9. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as they migrated from the east, which is where Eden was, as they migrated from the east, they came upon a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. So like new technology has presented itself. we now know how to fire mud and make bricks, where you used to have to go find rocks. Now we have brick and mortar. Verse 4, come. Then they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves. Otherwise we shall be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. So this is referencing the multiply, fill the earth. People are afraid of being scattered. They're afraid of like not having, like there's a lot of power when we're together and we're weak when we're apart. And there's a little bit of, you have to read into it a little bit, but there's a message here about dependency and independence, you know? Like we can be independent if we just gather together and all think the same thing.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert on where this is going for me. If we all think the same thing and have the same opinions about everything, then we can rule the world. You know, there's a little bit like, I'm reading into it a little bit, but that's kind of the idea. When in fact, the message that God seems to be calling people to is wide diversity. Spread out, fill the earth, have different kinds of people with different kinds of takes on things. And they're going, no, let's gather together and build a tower and make ourselves and like make a name for ourselves, you know? So, verse 5, the Lord, aka Yahweh, came down to see the city and the tower which mortals had built. Funny, because they built it as high as they could and God comes down.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of a joke from the writer.
Good way.
Verse 6, and Yahweh said, look, they are one people, and they have all one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do. Nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down. Interesting, because again, God, the proper nouns and pronouns of God are plural. So God is talking to God's self saying, let us go down, which is very interesting, because again, we're coming out of this pantheon of gods kind of mentality, trying to move people from pantheon of gods that don't care about humans at all and will demand child sacrifice and yada, 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 into this one God who controls everything, who actually cares. Like, it's a progressive idea. It's moving people out of like sacrificing a lot of what we actually need to survive into like, no, there's a God who cares about you and you can trust this God. So, but that God says, let us go down. Come, let us go down and confuse their language there. This is verse 7. Come, let us go down and confuse their language there so that they will not understand one another's speech. So Yahweh scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore, it was called Babel, which in English means like Babel, Bibble Babel, but I did some etymology research. It's not related to that at all. Like, it has more to do with the original Hebrew language. Babel and the Hebrew word for confused are very similar. So, therefore it was called Babel, because there Yahweh confused the language of all the earth. And from there, Yahweh scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. So, in very straightforward, basic terms, what we have here is a new technology, people gathering together to make a name for themselves and to be independent and to literally do the opposite of what Yahweh has called them to do. Yahweh comes down and thwarts their efforts and fulfills the original calling anyway. All right, then I'll scatter your languages and I'll scatter you geographically, and you will fill the earth no matter what. So that's kind of the basics of the story structure. Now, before I move on, as I often like to do, questions, comments, observations, concerns?
You have to have something. Nothing? I've got one. Hearing this as a kid, it's always come to sound like this was a curse versus him just getting the job done. Just like, I'm gonna have to take care of myself type of thing, roll up my sleeves and make everyone learn a different language. But instead it sounds like you're all done, you might as well be done. And then curse is there, Babel happens, whatever.
Well, and I would say the word curse is not anywhere in this
right.
text.
Right. So it was was preached or taught to me wrong.
Right.
But the idea was this is back. Can you imagine
when we're dealing with interpretation? Like I want to be careful about, because I reserve the right to change my mind 2 years from now when I re-engage this text.
Yeah.
Like interpretation has that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what we mean when we say that Scripture is this living document. It's because it's filled with stories, not facts.
Yes.
Right.
So I'm wondering if I took that a little close to heart too.
Well,
and
and
hearing like
I also am with you.
Yeah.
Like that is the way that I was
Yeah.
like told the story originally also.
like, and they were bad, and bad things happened.
Yeah,
when
I'm
you're bad.
pretty sure
It's-
that's how I was also told the stories.
Yeah, but
What-
it's to get the fear in you. You gotta listen when he asks, because it'll be blah 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 blah. And it taps at something that maybe the teacher wasn't getting at, but the loneliness thing, very very hint. But what if all three of us start speaking a different language and don't understand and don't know our intent,
We're isolated.
and we're
Yeah.
literally next to each other?
Yeah. It makes me think of
I would hate that.
Right.
Well, so I've known
But you're
a
not thinking
couple
that
of
as a kid.
people in my life who are deaf, and one of the things that they describe, like how intimate language is to human beings, and like as a deaf person, speaking quote unquote sign language, that is a language that only a specific type of person, for the most part. I mean, there are people who aren't deaf that know sign language, but for the most part, the deaf community is a close-knit community as it's been described to me. And it's like, it's a lot of people who have a very similar life experience that only they can communicate with each other. And they don't get a lot of influence and communication from outside of that. And like, that's a source of pain. Like that's a hard thing. It's also a source of like life and joy for them too, as it's been described to me. Like that there is a close-knitness that comes with that. But there's also like a pain that comes with that, because you're only getting like a segment of the human experience, and not because they're deaf, not because of the ableness of their physiology, but because of the actual like limit in human communication with other peoples. Mm-hmm. Like that's a really hard thing to deal with, you know? So there is something very like intimate and personal about the repercussions of what this story is implying, you know? Here's an analogy that I really think is helpful in this, because I too had the same kind of background interpretation of like, oh, people develop technology and God doesn't like technology. So he comes down and he says, don't be in a city, be spread out. And I don't think it's that at all. It's not a rail against modern technology or against cities, as a lot of people have kind of like taken up arms and like railed against, you know. This is a call for the suburbs. Like, no, it's not. God doesn't prefer suburbs, as best I can tell. But instead, so Jonah, my lovely dog, especially when he was like not quite a puppy, but like he was grown, he was like adolescent,
Like a teenager.
Yeah, and he was like not filled out, but he was certainly as tall as he is, and he has this really awkward long body. Like most dogs can lay down on their chest, and he can't. Like he can't like lay down flat and like sprawl out and put his legs out. Like he can't do it. His body doesn't work. And one of his early tricks that I taught him was roll over. And I learned that like roll over very quickly. I learned it hurts him to do it. Like he can't, his body hurts to roll over, you know? So he stopped doing the trick, obviously. And so he was always this kind of, oh, hello, my love. My wife has entered the household. How's it going? Check all of our angles and make sure we're all beautiful.
Sure.
Okay. I'll ask you about your day later, I promise. So he had a weird, awkward body. And there's this ottoman that we still have. It's this old ottoman that he loves because he can just like get on it and he fits on it. And he never like fit in the house. He was always kind of floppy and stumbled over himself and yada, yada, yada. So,
It's just a dog on an ottoman. I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah, he does this thing. He backs his butt up to the ottoman, and he has his feet down here, and he sits on the ottoman like this. And,
Like a pull step. He's like, I'm just
right.
here.
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
relaxing.
And it's because his body's so awkward that he doesn't fit in like the real human world, you know. So like I had this awkward, goofy dog for a long time, and as he grew up, obviously exercise becomes a really important thing, and so I got a bike and started running him on the bike when he was young. He had all this energy, and all of a sudden, when I put him on the bike and we started going, like he was this awkward, clumsy, paws and head too big for his body kind of dog. And all of a sudden, I would put him on the bike, and we would get going, and his gait would open up, and his like natural musculature would like come into effect, and he would turn into, and his ears would go back, and his like head would line up perfectly with his skull. I mean, his skull would line up perfectly with his spine, and he would create this like streamlined aerodynamic, and like you could see all of a sudden his long limbs. And it's because I think he's a mutt. I think he has greyhound DNA in it.
Yeah.
And when I throw the ball at the dog park, like I got one of those long arms and I threw the ball because I never taught him to fetch. He's a lab, and he's a lab mutt, so he retrieves. He taught me, hey, throw the ball and I'll bring it to you. Like he would just bring stuff to me randomly, He would like bring my sandals and like drop them. I'm like, here, I got this for you. I'm like, oh, he's a retriever. And I would go to the dog park and I would pick up that tennis ball and I would throw it, and all the other dogs would like run for it. But he just like a black streak was just like way out in front, because Jonah was like made to run. Like he was made to sprint. He was made to like go after like small game, like squirrels and stuff. He that's just in his blood and bones, And there's something really magical about when Jonah leans into what he's designed for, and his gait, all of a sudden, all of these awkward things become benefits, and he like leans right into exactly what he's supposed to be, and in fact can catch a squirrel sometimes, So like there's something going on in the Tower of Babel story that is this: God is calling people to multiply and fill the earth. Like that's the calling. Multiply and spread. And people instead say, let's gather together and be safe. Let's feel okay instead, rather than taking the risk of being who we're called to be. And for me, the moral of the Tower of Babel story is what God wants to happen happens anyway. Like there's no amount of like human effort that thwarts God's ultimate intentions for where everything is going. And yet, like there's this entire population in the Tower of Babel story that don't get to take part. They never get to discover that opening stride of what they're capable of when they lean into what God's called them to be. Instead, God comes down and says, all right, done, spread, like, let's just force this to happen, And I think there's something in that, in the like, it's really scary to take God up on a calling. It's really frightening. And if it's not, that's probably not the calling, because almost every calling that is really important actually like requires some fear and some risk and some, like there's something to it. So I'll stop there because I have my own personal examples.
Yeah, I just want to like add to that, like as an Enneagram too, I think the thing that's I said it just for you. The thing that's like scary for me in that also is like, not only is that scary, but also like people aren't always going to agree with what you're doing or like what you're doing.
Tell me all about it.
And will frequently challenge you on that, especially if you're standing up for what you think is the right thing, especially if they disagree with that and their definition of right looks different. Like
now, I do want to be careful because I completely concur with exactly what you're saying and have been really feeling that a lot lately. What?
Who said, are you serious?
What?
She likes that.
No, I completely agree with you. I also want to be careful that I don't want people who are hearing this conversation to then go off and be like, see, I just got to be me. And,
right.
And whatever I feel is the truth is the truth. And anybody who doesn't like that can, like, no, that's not it. Like, absolutely, be the person you think you're called to be, and let's also practice some healthy self-awareness and some healthy communal
and the truth
relationships.
isn't always you are right all the time. In fact, there's a lot of gray involved in
Right.
what truth actually is.
Yes.
Mostly gray. And to reposit this applies to each of us here as well. It's not a
Right.
we know exactly what's right for you, and you need. That's almost the same argument of I know what's exactly right for you.
I spend
this blind.
It's a hard thing to do, but it's one of the most valuable practices that I've integrated into my life that has not been natural. Like this is a practice that I've had to like literally force into my being, and it is the practice of genuinely really checking in with people who are close to you. That's not a thing that most people know how to do or can do, and even if they do, they're not really open to hearing the truth. And so like one of the things, speaking of my wife, who is very lovely and helpful, one of the things that is most beautiful, I think, about our partnership is that for the most part, it's like we support each other and fuck that bitch, like that kind of thing. But we have the gear when necessary. And I use it a lot with her where I will say, I'm not looking for support. I'm not looking for affirmation. I'm really looking for like, am I okay here? Am I out of line here? What's going on here? And having multiple people in my life who I can do that with is a practice that I started doing years ago.
Right.
And it's not easy, and it doesn't work 100% of the time, but like that practice alone has, I think, made me a much better and much more reasonable and much more gracious human in ways that, because everyone always has their kind of like shitty part. Everyone's got something that's like the bad part that like they just never quite get over or whatever. That's the most potent and effective weapon against my dark shadow bad parts that actually hurt people. The most effective weapon in my arsenal is checking in with people who are close to me and having a relationship that genuinely expects and allows for like actual critical feedback. And it's hard and it's unnatural and it doesn't feel great all the time. But having that as a practice has saved me in a lot of ways. It's prevented me from going down like dark holes of resentment and anger and rage, and like it's the things that go wrong with a lot of the political problems we're having right now. Where they go wrong is when people lean too hard into resentment and vengeance and rage. And that's why BLM, very worthy cause, like protesting for like a noble reason and wanting real good things to happen. Oh, I don't know what that was. But really genuinely concerned citizens who are trying to do well and do good. And for the most part, that's how it goes. And then there's this like small subset of that population who are consumed with rage and vengeance and resentment, I think. And that turns into like, some people have died. Some people have like burned places down. So like, and that let us not pretend that same thing doesn't live in each and every one of us. And you can say the same thing for people who are on the right, like people who lean into like the Blue Lives Matter thing. Like, okay, I hear where you're coming from. Yeah, you're right. Like police lives absolutely matter. And also, when that turns into this resentment and rage, like it can manifest itself in like racism and violence and we've seen it. We can see it in real time going wrong right now when people don't accept the calling of who they're supposed to be, which requires a risk and a vulnerability and a humility, and instead they take up the thing that, no, let's just gather together and be us. Let's just all be Trump supporters and go attack people. Like, let's just all be like Black Lives Matter, progressive as fuck people and punch a Nazi. Like it's the worst elements of humanity when we get into those places. It's the things that lead to violence and hatred.
We were talking about this last week with the experiment. I can't remember the guy's name now. It was an M. But the shock experiment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
It's literally how Nazi Germany happened. We have a very poetic, speak-worthy guy in front going, whatever he's saying. He's got the mustache. And people go...
How much of it do you think was that mustache, man? Nobody else. There's one other guy in the world who had it. It was Charlie Chaplin.
Michael Jordan rocked it a little bit, too.
I know. we've all been watching the documentary.
But aside from him being speak-worthy or whatever a good word is for that, the
charismatic,
the cult, that 90% of culture right there watching, going, I don't know if he's exactly correct.
Well, also it's like, but also it's like there's an element of like it's not safe for me to speak up.
Yeah,
it's much safer for us all to just gather together and think the same things together,
rather than me speak up and possibly be killed or be posted for something or whatever. I'd rather just flip the switch and follow the instructions and not really think for myself.
Yeah, and quite frankly, like
I mean, you think of millions of examples. They're all over the Bible.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who he was a theologian, a Christian, a devout Christian. I believe he was a monk. I can't remember, but he was a German during World War II, and arrived at the conclusion that as a moral Christian person, he had an obligation to try and kill Hitler. And like, that's a weird thing to arrive at if you're a Christian, that my responsibility is to take a life and to end suffering, you know? And it cost him his life. It didn't work out well, you know? There's something about that risk taking. And there's something about that willingness to follow a calling. Now, it's really, really hard because we're talking about extreme scenarios, and I certainly don't want to give somebody some weird he's right, I need to go take life. Like, no.
Please no.
That's not. We're not in that scenario. That's the exact opposite of what I want to get at. Only when really, really nefarious evil and like genocidal maniacs have taken fascist control of the government can you start to even remotely consider that as an option. That is not the case. And for all those out there who think I'm signaling, like, that is absolutely not the case. I'm no fan of the president right now, but that is absolutely not the case. Like, our democracy is still intact. Fucking vote. Don't do anything crazy. But there is something about the difficulty of navigating that type, like the callings that present themselves to us, and knowing the difference internally between, am I being called to risk and to be humble before my calling and to like give of myself to serve others, or am I actually creating a false narrative to make myself feel better so that I can be the center of the, those are hard things to navigate, and it's more tricky inside than people might think it is, you know? Because and that's one of the things that I think is important to note about the Tower of Babel story. They have a point. Like, it's a dangerous world. Let's build walls. Let's build a tower. Let's build something that can protect us from the danger. Let's be together. We're stronger together. Like, these aren't necessarily bad things, you know? And so it's really easy to go down that path and feel like, hey, we're woke as fuck, you know, like that. And that's where I see it a lot. And particularly in the political schema of today, both sides feel completely and totally justified, unto themselves. And it's one of the worst things about human culture right now.
Settling?
Well, I would say lack of compromise, lack of integration, lack of willing, maybe not lack of willingness, maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's an overt willingness to absolutely demonize the other. And one of the things that significantly changed my whole life, because again, I'm a Democrat, I'm a classic liberal, I've always been left leaning. one of my really, really good friends voted for Trump when I was like, I don't understand how anyone could vote for Trump. To me, it was so obvious and so clear that he was the villain and this is such a terrible thing. And it was a hard day when he won. And then coming to understand where my friend was actually coming from. And I was like, oh, I actually don't disagree with a lot of what you're saying. Like, there are some small things that I think, I've arrived at different conclusions.
Trump wasn't the piece of meat that needed to be there, but the idea around that piece of meat with the toupee or whatever he's wearing could have been anybody else.
Well,
with the idea or cloud of, hey, we don't need a politician in that role. We need somebody that's somewhere else.
The idea of, again, coming to understand where he was coming from shifted my whole understanding and mentality about this exclusion. Like it shed some light on my own echo chamber, my own propensity to gather in a tower with people who agree with me.
Yeah, I'll do that. This is very small scale compared to that, but in a traffic jam or something, and you go off. If you don't do this, you're not a human being. You go off on something. They cut you off. They don't use a blinker. I do this all the time. I do it every single time, and I get pulled over for going 2 miles over the speed limit. This is complete bullshit. And then you get down, and every single time I'll go, "What are you doing, man?" Just look at myself in the mirror or talk to myself and laugh on the way to wherever I'm going at just how upset and just
on rare occasions when I can. Mostly I get caught up in it. Mostly I get stuck in the and literally walk through the door pissed.
Yeah.
Because of some stranger who was, I don't know, they were thinking about something else. They just didn't think about cruising in the passing lane at all.
Yeah.
It's like, and they couldn't care less about me. And there's a weird thing going on there. And I'm actually glad you kind of dismissed it as a trivial example, but I actually think that it's things like that are the most, now traffic is a little bit of a preaching cliche because it's easy to get at. Everyone has had this rage-filled, who was that kind of experience in traffic? But it also manifests in lots of other ways. One, just willingness to humble ourselves to risk not being right and to risk being taught. How many spouses have split up because neither one of them would do that? Right. This is and how many kids hate their parents because parents were unwilling to do that and children were unwilling to do that. This propensity to gird up inside of ourselves and not have to deal with the thing that disagrees with us or is external to us, to not accept the calling of being humble before things that might change us and shape us and bring us out of ourselves. That's, I think, ultimately what the story of the Tower of Babel is.
I think it ties in well. It's the humility here would be the approach of, maybe we don't know what's going on. Let's maybe follow for a second.
Yeah, maybe things are bigger than me.
Yeah.
I feel like we limit ourselves when we don't allow for space for that. We limit what we can learn, we limit who we can be, we limit the relationships we can create.
Even space is limited. Limiting yourself to this circle of space, the limit does not exist. Just do that. Was that Mean Girls? No. Confessions?
I don't know.
Some Lindsay Lohan movie. But, yeah, some Lindsay Lohan movie.
Oh, wait. Yeah, it was Mean Girls, wasn't it? The limit does not exist. Yeah. It was the math. So, the math,
and I'm just playing off of you just to get you going. But to put a limit on yourself is what you're saying, where there should be none.
Right.
The humility is, everything is so much bigger than me,
and that's terrifying.
Yes.
Think about the nature of the calling: multiply and fill the earth. This is back when the cosmos was limited to what the landscape, and so imagine if our calling was to fill the universe. That's ridiculous. What are you talking about? That's insane.
But we at least have a way of getting there. Some what we can get in a piece of metal that can
Not
kinda
more,
shoot
not
up.
more than they did.
No, right.
That's what I mean. Like the calling is an intentionally humbling calling.
Into the unknown.
Into the unknown.
Teaser for next week.
It's
Oh no. Sorry, we're doing Hercules next week.
It's the same.
A different Disney movie.
Go the distance.
We're doing Go the Distance. Right.
But that terrifying feeling of everything's bigger than me is the unknown factor of I don't know what's going to happen and I need to control it. And if I can't control it, I'm scared and I don't want anyone to know that.
Well, and this is a metaphor not only for faith, but I think for human life. It requires a willingness to risk losing yourself. So, like, this is kind of abstract, but
what's the word you used when we were talking about suffering? It wasn't. I think it was surrender. Yeah.
Surrender.
The surrender.
I use that word. Yeah.
Is the humiliation. It's
Right.
the humility part of it. Of
Yeah.
I've got to give up, or I'm not getting
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It's not happening.
And that's kind. So this is like inherently a metaphor for like I think the human experience, like the human condition. We think that the solution is going to be technological, external, protecting ourselves, guarding ourselves. And that ultimately only leads to like inward death. Like it leads to numbness, it leads to isolation, it leads to separating ourselves from who we are supposed to be. It's like Jonah staying inside and staying on the ottoman and never really opening up his gate. You know, he never learns that he can actually, like, that he was born for something. He was made for something, you know? And it's not enough to just, like, know that. People, for the sake of, like, just feeling okay about existing, people have to experience and feel I was born for something. I was made for, like, that's a unique thing about us, you know? If we don't have that, it's all for naught. Then our lives are essentially have this feeling of like wastedness to them, and it's like, and it's an existential crisis. And it's something that a lot of, especially 20-something, a lot of like millennials right now are like dealing hard
Right now?
Just right now.
Only right now? Not
Right
the
now, for the
70s?
next couple
No,
hours.
Yeah. After that.
Well, I would
Okay.
say particularly millennial people particularly have a difficult time with it because there have been like historically in the United States, there have been these grand external things.
What I was getting at was like when Vietnam happened and
Yeah.
hippies came out who were this millennial age right now of, you gotta stop the war, it's not cool, man.
Right.
And parents thinking, you're just protesting to smoke weed and be crazy. However, it was for a pretty good cause.
So one of my kind of big complaints about like my peers, we are rebels without a cause.
Yeah.
Like we
Literally.
really, really are. We adopt causes.
Yes.
Some of that, and this is the hard thing. So again, like the example of BLM, it is a good cause. That's an actual worthy cause. And then you start to ask like really directed questions like, okay, what's your goal? Like to have fewer dead men in the hands of police. Okay, great goal.
Is it achievable?
And it's
Great goal.
and well, then you start going down the rabbit hole of like,
Yeah.
and that's working, like and that is happening. We are making that progress. What would you like? What would you like to see in place to help prevent that? And you know, again, some really helpful things, and some really destructive things. And there's something about the rebel without a cause thing going on there, where you talk about Vietnam, and it's like hundreds of thousands of people are dying. Like, we should absolutely not be in Vietnam versus not a trivial amount, but like 1,000 people die at like as a result of like racial discrimination in police custody, at least. And so like there is this weird thing of like we we so desperately want a cause to fight for. Like we need a purpose. We need a cause to fight for.
Adversity, really.
Right.
And
we're in a very like prosperous, kind of fortunate. It's the best time to be alive. It's very like everybody is better off than they've ever been. Like, not to say that everybody's on equal playing grounds, because that's not true.
I was going to say monetarily, I think
but like there is a prosperousness that we haven't seen historically speaking.
Safety wise, access to safety. And
the last 20
access
years,
to housing, access to this, access to that, all accessible. Homeless people with cell phones is all I'm going to say.
Well, there's a lot of nuance to these issues.
Yes,
like a lot of nuance. But the very serious blanket statement is almost every issue that you can pick: infant mortality, poverty, homelessness, racism, sexism, queer phobia, like any major issue that you can pick, now is the best time to be alive for any of those issues, like right now.
Comparatively to the past.
Right.
Yes.
Now, again, lots of ways, like lots of progress to make.
I know.
Lots of progress to make.
But this has been not a problem. It has been just misconstrued, I should say. When you do say this, there's never a comparatively to past years, which it should be assumed because we're talking.
But now is the best time to be alive so far.
Yes.
For any of these issues.
So far, I think is a very
good. And I think the caveat of, but that doesn't make the stuff that is still happening, like racism.
No, what we're not saying is.
Okay.
If
like just because it's the best time to be alive doesn't mean that it is okay.
Certainly. I mean, anytime someone dies needlessly, like that's horrific.
But we're literally talking about this in the Bible story. Like, why are we settling and making towers, dude?
Well, so here's what I want to say about
going.
So the natural propensity for human beings is to then hoard up in like-minded tribes, which is what we're seeing. Like we're literally observing it.
Yep.
Hoard up in like-minded tribes, exclude any information from the opposite, from the enemy, build walls around ourselves. We'll all have the same language. I mean, like, there's a lot of
smells the same.
Deep analogies going on in this story. We'll all get together, we'll have the same language, we'll build walls around us so that no one from the outside can get in, and we'll build ourselves up to righteousness. And it ends in destruction and separation. And quite frankly, that is what I observe in current contemporary climate. Like it is ending in destruction and we're not making the same amount of progress that we were making when we were talking to each other and humbling ourselves enough to hear from the opposite. Like that way that feels like it's going to destroy us is actually the better way and is actually the calling of God to that diversity and here's the thing. Us liberals have had this really weird claim on diversity. And yet we have successfully excluded a lot of conservative voices that have a lot of reasonable things to teach us. And so we have this simultaneous claim to self-righteousness because we're so diverse and also get out of here, you racist assholes. It's like, well, hold on. Let's not just immediately demonize that which is the other. What would it be like for us to dismantle some of our walls and actually engage each other? Now, that's a two-way street, and it's harder than that. And it's like, again, we have like years of this going on now. But the macro scale, I think, is a really good example of how that goes wrong. Also, the micro scale, we have a hard time doing that one-on-one. Like human beings have a hard time being next to someone who disagrees with them if they actually give voice to their opinion. It's ridiculously hard to just let a differing opinion be a differing opinion.
It's always both sides, I think. I think it's always both. If there's two in a discussion, there's two in a discussion, period. It doesn't have to be right or wrong. It doesn't have to change anyone's opinion. But if somebody needs you to hear them, sit down and shut the hell up. Just listen
Well,
for a second.
I would say like there's something.
Because maybe it's not the information needed for them to tell you. I think there's a bigger picture there, and a lot of people aren't seeing that.
Well, there's something about the like fear, like it feels like you're going to be destroyed.
Yeah.
It's not an intellectual thing as much as it is this visceral, primal fear of like, let's gather together, let's build a wall around ourselves, and let's not let anything in. Like, and
then we can be perfect.
Yeah, and then we'll be righteous. We'll make a name for ourselves. We'll build a tower to the heavens. Like, there's a lot of metaphor going on here that is absolutely human nature. And again, like almost everything in the Bible, the invitation is to take down your walls and risk being destroyed. And so, like, that to me is the primary message of this story, is what would it be like in whatever area, whether it's with your parents or your spouse or a political disagreement or like whatever, like everybody has like points of tension and conflict. And what would it be like to take down our walls and to actually risk creating a relationship that's not about the trappings of what's going on, but actually is vulnerable and risks connecting with each other. Like, what would it be like to take down those walls? And it will, and I will say, and it'll probably hurt.
It's very heavy.
Anytime you create a relationship with somebody, they're going to say something that hurts. Now, I think there's an important distinction between hurt and harm. Like, can we be strong enough people who can allow our feelings to be hurt for the sake of something bigger and broader, which is this calling, like to multiply and fill the earth, which from another angle looks a lot like unity among the human species. You know what I mean? Like, when you talk about multiply and fill the earth, you're talking about an inherent recognition that we're all human together and that we all have something, the image of God, we all have something that's infinitely valuable in each of our souls, regardless of the external stuff.
We all are, so let's be.
Yeah.
Where's the in-between here?
And it will require humility and risk of harm, even. But mostly hurt. And like, if you're talking in the United States, it's like hurt.
Not even physical, it's reputation now, or it's money, or it's whatever else that can do other things to make you feel better about you. Yeah. Which could also be
being willing to sit and talk and listen and be, and not just sit, because that sounds so trivial. What I'm talking about is a genuine heart-to-heart connection with somebody, like actually letting somebody in. Mm-hmm. And we have this thing that if we do that, it's going to destroy us. When the exact opposite is the truth. Taking down our walls, letting people in, is the way to life and purpose and meaning.
Period.
All right.
You said it wrong. Period. You gotta add the...
It's the T that makes it.
Yeah, you gotta add the silent T.
Take the D out of it. It's not period.
Period.
T. It's not period.
It's period.
Yeah, just the T.
That's what I said.
All right.
That's not what you spell.
May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.
Period.
Now,
help me make the most of freedom and of pleasure. Nothing ever lasts forever. Everybody wants to rule the. There's a